What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Other Guys on the Badlands Podcast Network. Jake Chatsky joined alongside Paul Kilgallen, as always, coming off what, I think most people saw coming, another loss for the Jets. I don't know how in the world they were favored in this game, and they shouldn't really be in any game this season or going forward. Paul, coming off the loss, we're recording Sunday night, so it's still fresher in our heads than when we usually do this on Mondays. How you feeling?
Yeah, just I don't even know what else to say at this point. Like to your point, I mean, favored at home against the Colts with Anthony Richardson starting, fine. Favored by 4.5 doesn't really make sense. Like I get give them a couple points at home or whatever. But the Colts
I don't.
play people tough. Like they generally, yeah, it's true at MetLife. I'm not sure it's even a good thing, but just by conventional betting standards, the Colts play people tough. The Jets, I guess, have played in close games this year, but they tend to get blown out also. And so I don't know. It was a bad line, and there's a lot of people out there right now making a lot of money off the Jets because the books haven't caught up to the fact that the Jets suck yet. And another just like annoying game to watch because they go down 13-0, and you're like, all right, good, and you're just rooting for the carnage, and then they like bring you all the way back, and you get to the point where you're like, man, like I know we probably shouldn't win this game, but man, what if, right? What if they get hot, and then they find another just absolutely mind blowing way to lose it at the end. That last sequence there between the last offensive drive for the Colts and then if you could even call that a possession that the Jets had with a minute and a half left there with Rodgers fumbling and taking a sack when he absolutely couldn't. Their timeout usage, like all of it, it was so bad that it was like they were trying to lose. They were trying to look stupid. I said in our group chat, like all it was missing was the Benny Hill music to really solidify just how much of a circus this whole thing was. And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot the last couple of days, and I've said this to a couple of my friends, is like, if we go back 5 years and you told yourself in 2019 that whatever happens with Sam Darnold, whether we move on for him or not, like when that was the hot debate, right? We're going to have 8 quarterbacks start games over the next 5 years, and it's the last one is going to be Aaron Rodgers, and we're also going to have Devontae Adams, and we're going to be worse. Our record's going to be worse, and we're going to feel worse at the end of it with Rodgers and Devontae Adams that we did at any point during the stretch with the random 8 quarterbacks like Josh Johnson and Mike White and Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold and Joe Flacco and Trevor Siemian and Tim Boyle. Like, we're going to feel worse than we did with Aaron Rodgers than we did at any point during that entire 5-year stretch. Like, it's stranger than fiction, Jake. You wouldn't have believed it if somebody told you that 5 years ago. And I've been thinking about that a lot the last couple of days. It really is just, there is no, I mean, we've said it a million times, there's no rock bottom. They just keep blasting through the bottom of it and finding a new depth to sink to. It's outrageous. And I sure am tired of watching it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, we talked about whether or not to go into like the minutia from this game, and we'll get to some stuff in a minute, but it almost feels like pointless. It feels insane to keep repeating the same talking points week after week. Like, this team is very much who they are. We know they are a bad football team. We know this. We'll come and talk about it every week, but like, there is no surprise. We are not waiting for the other shoe to drop. The Jets are a miserable football team and a miserable organization. And I saw I think it was Steve I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He used to work for PFF, but that he had that tweet that was going around about the winning percentages under the Jets' last 3 quarterbacks, and he took away the Rodgers win from week 1 last year, which I think he should. He played 4 snaps. And of Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers, that's the order of their winning percentages. And like, that to me is fucking insane. And it's almost like, I almost believe that more than what this defense has turned into. The defense is an absolute shell of themselves. They've been practicing tackling for 14 days straight, and no one on the team can make a tackle. Michael Clemens is not a real NFL player, and they keep trotting him out there on like critical downs where he just gets run over by quarterbacks at the goal line. I'm I am struggling to find the words to describe how bad this fall has gotten, but this is the most depressing Jets season we've had in a decade, which is an insane thing to say because we were 2-14 like less than 5 years ago.
100%. And they started off the game poorly. They kind of recovered, midway. I was kind of like, all right, like they do look legit right now. But then when you needed them most, they completely fell down. And, and Sauce got like the Bronx cheer when he made a tackle at one point. We got another Bronx cheer when the Jets made their first down, which was with like 2 minutes left in the first half. And Sauce talked about the cheer after the game, talking about how good the crowd was because he got such a big round of applause just for making a tackle. I was like, dude, you don't even get it. Like, you don't even understand what just happened to you out there. Like, that was not a loving round of applause, dude, for a tackle. And like you said, when we needed them most, they completely fell down. And, the whole like in perfect form part of that last drive is, what at least looks to be not a completely blown coverage by Sauce, but like a play where he could have made a better effort and didn't. And I think, I probably can't say it any better than Bart Scott said it on the SNY post game. If anybody has the chance, I'm sure that video is going to get clipped and it's going to float around on Twitter this week because Bart went on for probably 5 to 7 minutes in the opening on the SNY post game about specifically what Sauce did wrong there and why it's bad and why it's lazy and all that stuff. And we were joking around during the game that like, oh, I can't wait to hear why that wasn't his fault, right? And even in the post game, like obviously he's gotten some media coaching and he kind of said the right thing where he was like, let's just, we have to look at the tape. But the fact is they caught him on camera pointing at Jalen Mills as the play was happening, right? Which is exactly what Connor talked about in the War Room pod this week. Is like, that's the most frustrating thing about this team is that they point fingers. So they caught Sauce pointing at Jalen Mills live. And then after the game, he just kept saying like, watch the tape, watch the tape, watch the tape. And he was like sighing heavily. And you could tell that he was holding it in. Like, he's like, all right, I've been told to not point blame after a game in a press conference, right? So I'll do that. But my entire body language is still going to say that I'm shifting blame and I didn't do anything wrong and it was my fault and watch the tape and blah, blah, blah. So, like, at a certain point, it's just not a thing you can coach anymore. It's like that it is kind of just what it is at that point. And I think the only kind of real one in the post-game pressers was DJ Reed. He stood up and he owned all of it. Like he always does, by the way. Like, he always kind of gives you the truth. He never gives you the non-answer coach speak. And they asked him, like, look, and I said this last week with Meigs too, and I don't want to get on here and be like they shouldn't have fired Saleh because he was a problem. He was part of the problem. He had to go. But it's okay to say that and then also say that it has had an effect on the defense, right? Like, right, wrong, or indifferent, it has had an effect on the defense. And they asked DJ Reed point blank that, and he was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I've noticed it too. Something's wrong. Something's missing. And so I don't know, man. I don't even know where to go from here. I keep saying like, I don't have any more words, but then I could talk for 5 minutes about it. So I don't know.
The thing that I'm most worried about, and you brought this up in our group chat, and so I got to give you all the credit there. But after listening to some post-game pressers, like, I'm worried that this team is so bad and has such a poisonous culture around it that the one shining gem that we're like, you got to keep Garrett no matter what. I'm worried he might be over it, and I don't know that, like, if you're rooting for positivity and you're not completely committed to the tank, which, like, I could say you should be as a Jets fan from like a logical standpoint. Like, the one thing I will say is, like, keep that kid happy, because I don't know what to do, but it seems like we are teetering on the brink of him not wanting to be a Jet in any way possible. And like, that is the type of like, culture killing cancerous season that we are in the midst of. And if there's one thing to fight against, because I don't care what percentages say, I don't care if it's 3%, 5%, 4%, it's zero. The Jets are not making the playoffs. Get that dream out of your heads. But if you are hoping for positivity, it's do what we can do to keep Garrett Wilson happy, because that's the only thing I could see as like, holy shit, this thing has gone even farther off the rails than I could have imagined, is a mass exodus of all the talent we do want to keep around because the culture has gotten so bad.
Yeah, I was watching it live, and while I was watching it, I was like, "He's off, dude. Like, he's not talking like he normally talks." And I wasn't sure if I was just being paranoid about it, so I did kind of a sanity check with you guys and like with a couple other people who I know are watching the post game, and pretty much everybody was agreeing and saying the same thing, that like he doesn't sound the way he normally sounds, especially after a bad loss. Like, he's usually pretty emotional. He's sometimes like borders on the brink of tears, and he's talking about like how they can get it fixed and all that. And he was up there today, or after the game against the Colts, and like he just sounded kind of like resigned to it and almost like emotionally steeled against it. Like, he was like wearing sunglasses, and he was just like, "Yeah, man, like, is what it is," like blah blah blah. And yeah, I think it's not just about the 3 years of being on a bad team. Like, that's one thing, right? And he definitely wouldn't be the first receiver or skill position player to go to a bad franchise and sit through a few bad years. And certainly there's been a ton of examples of that where those teams were able to keep the guy and keep him around, and you get him paid and whatever. And I think like Calvin Johnson's a good example of that, who just stuck around for everything that he went through in Detroit. But I think when you look specifically at the type of suffering that Garrett has endured here, where comes in first year, they like don't play him right away for whatever reason, and then he explodes against the Browns, and I think that was the second game of the season, and it's like, okay, he needs to be part of it. And then he goes through a million quarterbacks his first year, and then they're like, all right, we can't waste this kid. Let's get Aaron Rodgers in here. Year two, Aaron Rodgers blows out his Achilles after they built up this great relationship in the preseason. And then he suffers another year with Zach Wilson, somehow still manages to get 1,000 yards. So he gets like that, the first bad year, and then like the emotional high of Rodgers immediately bottoming out, and then like another bad year for the team with a good personal year. And then like you finally get it back and get Rodgers, and it's worse. And it's worse than it was before. And like, if you're him at that point, you have to start wondering, like, this is the franchise at this point. So like, it's not just about, I'm on a team that's bad for a couple years and I want to go somewhere and win immediately. Like, it's not like that. It's, this place is bad, and this place is always going to be bad. And if I want to have the best career that I want to have and I want to win, I need to get out of here. And like, the kid has to be thinking that. And maybe I'm overreacting again, but it sounded like he's moving that way in his press conference. And that would be, God, I mean, that would just be the saddest thing ever, because they do need to like do whatever they need to do to keep this guy around long term. So, geez, I really hope it's not moving in that direction.
Yeah, he's the type of kid that you could see being the leading, leader in, or the leading team leader in receptions, receiving yards. Like, you hit on the pick. Do what you can to keep him happy. There's a couple other things that have been going around Jets Twitter that I think we should address as well. There were like, I think it was Connor 2 had tweeted earlier in the week that Aaron Rodgers is fully committed to doing another year, and he wants 2 full healthy years with the Jets as always planned. Like, I don't know where you sit, especially after watching today. Like, I'm done with the Aaron Rodgers experiment. I think what Joe Douglas did to go out and get him, best move he could have done at the time, but it hasn't worked. And like, you watch him today, especially on that final sequence, he's playing to avoid sacks and interceptions. He's not playing to go win the game. And like, he obviously doesn't have the mobility and stuff anymore, as people had long been pointed out, but he was missing throws today. He wasn't accurate. And with where this team is, this tear this down to the studs rebuild, like, you do not, Aaron Rodgers is not the guy to get you through that. And he's not the guy to be your franchise mentor to the next quarterback either, because Aaron Rodgers is a one-man circus in and of himself. So I don't know where you sit. I do not care if Aaron Rodgers wants to play another year. If he does, that's great. Maybe we can get something for him. But Aaron Rodgers should not be a Jet in 2025. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I've been there. I've been there for a week or two now at this point, and I'm not like, we can't operate on the fear that he goes somewhere else and finds it again. For whatever scars Brett Favre left here of like, he gets hurt with us and then he goes to Minnesota and he plays well for another 2 years. Like, we just can't operate with that anymore. Like, you just have to make a clean break and move on, if you can, right? And hopefully you can, and you can find a way to, like, even if you could just like flip them for a 6th or 7th rounder at some point, it's like, all right, like, just extract the poison, for lack of a better word. And I don't want to